What up, my channel, and welcome to day 3 of BLACKATHON. So today I slept in until noon and I gave myself a couple hours to read, but now it is almost 2 o'clock, which means it's time for me to go to work. I will get back home in about 4 hours and then I will continue reading. Giovanni's Room is a very quick read. It's about 150 pages, so I have no doubt that I will finish it either at work or when I get home. And then I will probably just spend the rest of the night reading the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin and binge watching a TV show on Netflix. Fucking Christ. She's gone. Oh God. Work is over, it is now nighttime, and I did not feel like cooking, so I had a hearty dinner of ice cream. Since getting off work, I've spent much of my night reading Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This is the first title from James Baldwin I've ever read. I had incredibly high hopes for it, and I have to say, I hate this book more than I ever would have thought I could have hated a book. So the story is supposed to be about a closeted queer American who moves to Paris and falls in love with a Parisian woman. They become engaged and are setting up to live there happily ever after when David, the main character, falls in love with Giovanni, who is a local bartender. This book is often hailed as a hallmark of classic queer literature, and it's supposed to be about David uncovering his sexuality and figuring out whether he wants to live his life as a gay man or if he wants to marry his fiancée named Hella. That's not what this book was. Okay, first of all, I had to endure 100 pages of the most ambiguous and cryptic text that I have ever read. During those 100 pages, Hella was not present in the book at all. She was wandering about Spain, living her best life, and I had no idea if David was really in love with her or if he was just using her to be his beard, essentially. And during those 100 pages, David surrounds himself with flamboyant, old gay men that he absolutely cannot stand. He clearly hates these men and they don't seem to like him very much either, and yet he spends all of his time with them but also complaining and referring to them as effeminate and disgusting. And I could certainly understand if we were just given a problematic gay character who had to deal with his internalized self-hatred of gayness, and that's why he didn't appreciate gay or queer men who were flamboyant. But the way that those flamboyant gay men were portrayed throughout the book was wildly problematic on James Baldwin's part. Literally every single one of the gay men that were very feminine were all predators in the story. None of them were good people. They were all essentially human garbage. And the only gay men that could be seen as good people or were written as respectable were masculine men that could pass as straight. Not to mention, this book is rampantly misogynistic and hateful towards women. There's a scene where Giovanni brings up the fact that he has beaten women before, and then he and David have a great laugh about it, like it's the funniest thing ever. The encouragement of violence against women that happens throughout this novel is never once addressed. And because this is classic literature, since it's set, I think, in 1950, the sexism is to be expected. And I wasn't expecting a feminist novel, but I certainly was not expecting so many jokes about violence against women and so many negative and hateful messages towards women, especially not from James Baldwin. And then there's the topic of David's queerness. At one point, David spends 2 months living with Giovanni, and in almost every scene where he is having sex with Giovanni or looking at Giovanni or thinking about Giovanni, he is full of repulsion and self-hate and disgust for him. There were maybe 2 or 3 sentences throughout the entire book where he had a pure, loving, wholesome thought about Giovanni that wasn't also mixed with hatred and disgust. And yes, it is important to represent that, especially in this time period, there were a lot of self-hating gay men. There were a lot of gay men who were embarrassed and ashamed of their gayness, but the representation of gay love was just not here. Literally every single time Giovanni needed to be vulnerable, anytime that he cried or needed David to support him, David would comfort him, but then in his head be completely disgusted by the fact that Giovanni was being vulnerable before him. And he did the same exact thing to his female fiance, Hella. Anytime that Hella expressed any sort of weakness, David would comfort her, but internally be like, oh, this person is so weak and disgusting and I'm absolutely repulsed by her. This book honestly reads like David has a fetish for gay sex, but doesn't have the capacity to actually love a man. Quite frankly, I don't think he has the capacity to love a woman either. He was honestly such a hateful and despicable character, and the way that the book handled queerness, queer politics, was completely abhorrent. This is one of the most homophobic books I've ever read. I do not understand why y'all are hyping it as a piece of classic gay literature. I think that perhaps in the time period there was something revolutionary just simply about having written a novel about gay men, but is it truly revolutionary if your representation for gayness is riddled with tragedy, self-hate, abuse, and violence? I don't know about that. It wasn't written with the intention of showing even a little bit of gay love. And by the way, there's not one happy homosexual couple in this book. We never once see a scene of like two gay men sharing an innocent kiss or holding hands. Every single time a gay man is speaking throughout the novel or interacting throughout the novel, there's some undercurrent of negativity. It honestly just makes me sick. I hate this book so much. After reading this book, I really don't see how he is worshipped in literature the way that he is. And I really hope his Black literature is nowhere near as problematic as this was, because God help me. So it's getting late. I'm gonna start a TV show. I don't know if I'm gonna watch Black Lightning or if I'm going to start the Netflix original about a Afro-Latin witch who is burned at the stake and then comes back to life. All right, y'all, I just washed my face, got into my PJs, and I'm getting ready for bed. I'm so done with you. Literally anytime I'm in the bathroom, Ravenclaw follows and jumps into the bathtub and then stalks me until I leave. She literally just sits there and stares at me. I was ranting on my Instagram stories about how upset and disappointed I was at Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. And one of my good friends let me know that James Baldwin was actually a publicly gay man, which I didn't know. So that definitely, knowing that the book is Own Voices definitely changes my perception on it a little bit, but I still think that it's a toxic book. I still don't support it. But I definitely want to have a more nuanced conversation about this book. So if you have read it, especially if you loved it, I would like to know what you loved about it and how you felt about the elements that made me so uncomfortable. I also watched the pilot for Black Lightning, and I'm only on episode 1. I'm gonna keep watching it after I'm done editing and posting this video, but I'm completely in love so far. It is time to say goodnight to day 3 of Blackathon, but before I go, we have to do our Blackathon booktuber shout out. Now, if you missed my Blackathon day 2 shout out, Noraya Reads was the booktuber. Make sure you go to Noraya Reads' channel and check her out. But the booktuber that we will be honoring today is Taylor from Page Screen Taylor. What I love about Taylor is how bubbly and exuberant she is, and she's honestly one of the most sweet people that I have met in the booktube community, which says a lot because we have so many lights here. She's definitely not afraid to do new innovative things on her channel. She recently released a video titled 19 Booktubers to Watch in 2019, and she also just announced that she's doing something called Getting Hitched, which is a series where she critically analyzes the films of famed Hollywood director Alfred Hitchcock. I reached out to Taylor and I asked her to answer 4 questions. To introduce herself and her channel, to give us one of her biggest bookish pet peeves, to tell us what she would get a tattoo of if she had to get a bookish tattoo, and also to tell us what her favorite book is or her favorite book of the moment. Thank you for watching day 3 of Blackathon, and here is Taylor.
Hi guys, it's Taylor from Page Screen Taylor. Thank you so much, Jessie, for inviting me to be on one of your Blackathon vlogs. I am so excited to be here. So I mostly read fantasy, mostly young adult fantasy, although I do dabble in adult fantasy. I also read historical fiction. I kind of read all across the board. My biggest bookish pet peeve is sort of shaming girls, the sort of not like other girls trope. So if a girl is more effeminate or presents more femininity, she gets shamed for it and is kind of called vapid and, you know, looked down upon for not taking up a sword and charging into battle. Not every woman needs to take up a sword and charge into battle. Trust me, I would be a disaster. If I got a bookish tattoo, I think I would get a quote from one of my favorite books. I could go with "You Pierce My Soul," or Half Agony, Half Hope from Jane Austen's Persuasion. I can be basic and just do Always from Harry Potter. Or I could get a Hufflepuff tattoo. My favorite book of all time is Persuasion by Jane Austen. This is a sort of classic literature book written by the Queen herself. It follows a girl named Anne Elliot. At her family's request, she rejects the marriage proposal of Wentworth, even though, you know, they're really in love. Years later, Anne is 27 and unmarried, a poor spinster. Captain Wentworth comes back and he has had a major glow up. He is a captain, he's wealthy from the war, and he wants nothing to do with Anne. He wants to marry someone in their little village, but not Anne. He makes that like totally clear. However, the two must learn to put aside their past and grow as individuals before they can come together and persuade each other to love again. It's so good. It's so romantic. If you have a chance, please, please, please pick it up. Thank you so much, Jessie, for inviting me to be on one of your Blackathon vlogs. I am truly, truly, truly honored. And thank you so much for watching, guys. Bye.